Several consats worked with us throughout the district at different checkpoints. They served as interpreters and provided instant law enforcement. There was one consat in particular that none of us trusted. Our sergeant was well aware of this and had similar feelings. Over several weeks, not wanting to risk radio messages, he had sent handwritten messages back to Diane via the chopper. Sergeant warned everyone to be alert and to extreme caution when working with this man. We were given a free hand to deal with the situation we deemed necessary. Tran was usually found some excuse to be late to the Jeep or to the checkpoint. In the third week, Bruce and I were assigned with Tran to the checkpoint closest to our compound, but Tran was nowhere in sight. Sarge nodded for us to get set up. The roads, really only cow or ox cart paths, were closed at night, and either an APC or tank would park at the checkpoint to guard them. It only took us a few minutes to get into position as the mechanized guard moved away. 20 minutes later, Tran came walking down the path towards us, smiling as always. Our checkpoint was my pet cobra's home, and we were pretending to look for it. The consat handed us a message from the sergeant instructing us to do a second radio check. We knew this time that it meant that Tran had taken us too long. When I called in, Sarge said, "You guys took too long getting set up." This meant it took Tran too long to get there, and to be careful. Business was brisk that morning, for an hour or so. Tran did his job and checked nearly everything that came through. Gradually, he became less and less thorough. Bruce and I discussed it a couple of times with him. At one point, he lost his temper and yelled at us in Vietnamese, but after a few minutes, he settled down and apologized. A short time later, two villagers, a man and a wife, came through on foot. They actually spoke a little English. The woman motioned towards Tran and said quietly, "Very sorry for you and friend. This man, not good." Her husband gave a slight nod, and they hurried away. A few minutes later, we went back to the Jeep to make a notation in our logbook, which had somehow gotten stuck between the rear seat cushions. Climbing into the back to extract the book, I sat down to make an entry. Suddenly, Bruce yelled, "Vic, cover me!" I glanced up to see my partner sprinting forward, calling to Tran, "Stop that truck! Tran, stop him!" Bringing his M14 up to a firing position, Bruce took aim at a Lambretta Tran had just waved through. Tran yelled something at Bruce in Vietnamese. This was not good. When I stood up, I was at the butt end of the machine gun. I watched as the consat took his .38 from his holster and leveled it at Bruce about 50 feet in front of him. I couldn't use the M60 because a tree blocked part of my field of fire, and my rifle was leaning against the left front fender of the Jeep. I hollered out, "Bruce, hit the dirt!" My partner instantly gave up his firing position and flattened out on the ground as Tran fired one round at Bruce, barely missing him. I then pulled out my .45, cocking the hammer. I jumped from the Jeep, landing spread eagle on the ground. Tran was about 60 feet in front of me when I hollered in Vietnamese for him to drop his weapon. He abruptly turned towards the Jeep and fired. The round ricocheted off the steel turret where I had been standing just moments before. Partially concealed by the tall grass on the left front tire, I yelled again at the consat, this time in English, "Tran, drop your pistol." Instead, he looked down at me and moved his weapon to take another shot. I fired once, striking him in the right shoulder. I had never fully understood what a .45 round could do to a man, especially a small man. It flipped him like a rag doll. Bruce, still flat on the ground, looked at me and nodded. Then he quickly got to one knee, brought his rifle up, and fired 2 quick rounds at the escaping Lambretta, now well over 200 yards away. The shot split the vehicle's differential, collapsing the rear end. Tran was lying in some bushes, and I rushed over to him. He was still breathing, just unconscious. I picked up his pistol and tucked it in my belt, then checked with my partner to see if he was hurt. He wasn't. Running back to the Jeep, I then radioed for a medic and someone to cover the Lambretta and its driver. Help arrived quickly. 3 men secured the Lambretta while others approached us with their weapons ready. Even some of the CAF personnel showed up. The medics worked on Tran for a few minutes, and they prepared to move away to the cavalry unit's infirmary. One of the medics told our sergeant, "This consat has a broken shoulder and a collarbone, but he isn't seriously wounded." Bruce and I were both fine, but with the adrenaline pumping through our bodies, we were shaking so hard we could barely speak. The sergeant took us aside and with a deep breath and a sigh said, "I will never make fun of you guys from the 552nd again. You did one hell of a good job." The sergeant told one of our guys to stay with the prisoner. Then he went back to our area to make a radio report. He also requested a chopper take Tran back to Deanne for proper medical attention and questioning. The Lambretta driver and the other consats had long since disappeared. Searching the vehicle, we found large sacks of food with light weaponry and ammo hidden inside. Rocket launchers with ammo, additional rifles, and pistols had been concealed under a false floor and in the roof. It was ironic. Most of the bags were marked American Red Cross. There was also a map diagram of our deployment. It was scary to see how accurate it was.